I never imagined spending a summer weekend with my mom's old friend's son would shift everything I thought I knew about love, longing, and myself. When he quietly slipped into my life one stormy night, I didn't stop him, and everything changed. This is the story of how a single night, unexpected, electric, and intimate, became the catalyst for two hearts to awaken, to risk and to grow. It's a journey of trust and hesitation, tension and release, of unspoken feelings that bloom in the hush between words. It's about learning to embrace who we are together, honestly, without apology. Join me as we step into that summer night when boundaries blurred, breaths quickened, and two strangers became something more. Welcome to My Mom's Friend's Son Slept in My Bed, and I Didn't Stop Him. It was the kind of summer day that felt heavy with promise, like the air itself was waiting to burst. The sky above Forsyth County was a bruised mix of slate gray and violet, thick clouds rolling slowly as if reluctant to unleash the storm. I sat on the wooden porch swing, my fingers tracing the worn grain of the armrest, heart racing with that strange blend of anticipation and unease that often visits when something unspoken is about to change. I was 18, freshly graduated from high school, with a summer stretching endlessly ahead of me, yet also somehow feeling impossibly short. My mom, Sarah, had invited her old college friend Claire for a visit, someone she hadn't seen in years. Claire's sunny presence filled the house with warmth and nostalgia, and with her came Aiden, her son, also 18, and just as quietly restless as I was. I first noticed Aiden the moment he stepped out of Claire's car. The late afternoon rain drizzled down in fine threads, soaking the ground into a slick patchwork of mud and puddles. He was tall and lean, with a mop of dark hair that clung to his forehead from the wet, and eyes that seemed too serious for someone his age. Deep gray, thoughtful, watching everything with a cautious kind of curiosity. "Hey," I said, stepping forward as my mom introduced us, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted it to. "Welcome," he nodded, offering a polite smile. "Thanks." That was it. 2 words, but something about the way he said them stuck with me, like the first brush of a breeze before a storm. The first day passed in a blur of easy conversations and quiet moments. Mom and Claire caught up in the kitchen, laughing and swapping stories, while Aiden and I found ourselves drifting toward the old guitar resting against the wall of the guest room. I had always loved music but never learned to play an instrument, so when he pulled out his guitar case and gingerly lifted the instrument out, I offered to help carry it upstairs. Our hands brushed, light, accidental, and the jolt it sent through me was impossible to ignore. I shook my head and told myself it was nothing. Just nerves, just summer heat. That night, as I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, I could still feel that flicker. The storm came suddenly, crashing through the sky like a symphony of thunder and lightning. The wind rattled the windows, and the rain hammered down, drumming against the roof in chaotic rhythms. I pulled my blankets tight, trying to calm the restless thumping in my chest. Somewhere down the hall, I heard a door open softly, footsteps, quiet, hesitant, approaching my room. My heart stopped for a moment. I debated calling out, asking who it was, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed still, holding my breath, as a shadow passed by my doorway and disappeared down the hall again. My mind spun with questions and doubts, but I told myself not to overthink it. Tomorrow was another day. The next morning, the world was washed clean. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, painting the grass in shimmering gold. I found Aiden sitting on the porch steps, sketching on a scrap of cardboard, his pencil moving with precise strokes that captured the delicate lace curtains fluttering in the breeze. I hesitated before sitting beside him, careful not to disturb his concentration. He glanced up, surprised but welcoming. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied. There was an easy silence between us, filled only by the soft scratch of his pencil and the distant chirping of birds. "You draw well," I said finally. He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's a habit. Helps me focus." I nodded, intrigued. "I write stories. It's kind of like your sketches, I guess." trying to catch moments that might disappear otherwise. He looked at me, eyes brightening. I'd like to read sometime. The invitation was simple, but it meant more than I expected. I tucked a damp strand of hair behind my ear, suddenly self-conscious. Maybe, I said, smiling shyly. Later that day, the storm returned. Not as violent as last night, but steady and persistent. Aiden and I decided to take a walk down the gravel road behind the house. The trees arching overhead, leaves dripping with rain, the world smelling of wet earth and moss, thick and alive. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance, a deep, steady pulse that seemed to echo my own heartbeat. We walked side by side, careful not to speak too much. Words felt fragile in that rain-washed quiet. Finally, Aiden stopped and looked up at the sky, lips parted. "Storms are kind of beautiful, aren't they?" he said. I blinked, surprised by the softness in his voice. "Beautiful but reckless." He nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, reckless, but thrilling." Our eyes met then, and the world seemed to hold its breath. He reached out suddenly, fingers brushing against my damp hair, tucking it behind my ear with a gentleness that made my skin tingle. I pulled back instinctively, cheeks burning. "Sorry," he murmured, cheeks flushing. "It's okay," I whispered, though my heart hammered so loud. I was sure he could hear it. We laughed nervously, the tension broken, and as the rain began to fall harder, we broke into a run, splashing through puddles, voices mingling with the thunder. That night, I lay awake in my room, the echo of his touch burning under my skin. What was this feeling that churned inside me? It wasn't just a crush. It felt deeper, more urgent, like a secret I was afraid to admit. My mind raced, swirling with questions I didn't have answers to. Was I falling for him? Was this what people called love, or just a fleeting spark of summer heat? The house was quiet, except for the storm's distant rumble. Somewhere down the hall, I thought I heard a door open again. But this time, I stayed awake, waiting, breath caught when I saw a shadow pass by my door slower. This time, hesitant. I didn't stop him. Days passed, and the awkwardness between us dissolved into something more natural, like a gentle tide pulling us closer. We shared music, stories, and silent moments that spoke louder than words. I noticed the way he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. Curious, hopeful, uncertain. One evening, Claire and Mom prepared dinner while Aiden and I lingered in the living room, tossing popcorn into our mouths and watching an old movie. The lights were low, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. He sat beside me, his arm brushing mine. My heart fluttered wildly. For a moment, everything slowed. The noise, the light, the world itself. And all I could feel was the warmth of his skin against mine. He turned toward me, eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, unable to speak. "I'm glad you're here," he whispered. I smiled, the corners of my mouth trembling. In that quiet room, with the storm finally gone, something new was beginning. The days after the storm slipped into a slow, golden rhythm that felt both fragile and full of promise. Summer seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something we couldn't quite name yet, to break through the surface. Aiden and I had fallen into an easy companionship, the kind that starts with small moments, shared meals, tentative glances, and the quiet comfort of someone who understands the language of silence. We were like two halves of a conversation, each waiting for the other to speak the words neither dared say aloud. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where the heat presses down, but the breeze carries whispers of relief. The sun draped itself lazily over the neighborhood, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and freshly cut grass. Mom and Claire were at the farmer's market downtown, giving Aiden and me the rare chance for solitude. We'd spent the morning tangled in a patchwork of lazy conversations and half-finished drawings, and now we found ourselves on the porch again, toes dangling over the edge as the world stretched wide beneath us. "I never thought summer could feel this complicated," I said, breaking the silence. Aiden glanced at me, his eyes catching the fading light. "Complicated how?" I shrugged, trying to keep my voice steady. Like there's all this stuff inside that I don't know how to say. Feelings, I guess. Things I don't understand. He nodded, leaning back on his elbows. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to sketch it out or play a song. Words can be tricky. I've always been better with stories than real life, I admitted, a smile tugging at my lips. He chuckled softly. Stories can be safer. But sometimes, I said, voice dropping, they're the only way to tell the truth. He looked at me then, his expression open, vulnerable. You want to tell me a story? I hesitated, then nodded. Maybe one day, as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in strokes of pink and gold, Aiden pulled out his guitar again. His fingers traced the strings with a quiet reverence, coaxing out a melody that was soft and haunting. The music filled the space between us, wrapping around the edges of the evening like a warm blanket. I closed my eyes, letting the notes wash over me, feeling something stir deep inside. A mixture of longing and comfort, fear and hope. When the song ended, I opened my eyes to find Aiden watching me intently. That was beautiful, I whispered. He shrugged, cheeks flushing. It's not finished yet. I smiled, heart racing. I want to hear the rest. Later that night, the house was hushed, wrapped in shadows and the faint scent of rain from an earlier sprinkle. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, replaying the day's moments like a movie. Then there was a soft knock at my door. Come in, I called, voice barely above a whisper. Aiden slipped inside, holding a small notebook, his dark hair damp from the humid air, his eyes shining with a mixture of nerves and determination. I wrote something, he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. His voice was low, steady. I'd like to hear it, I replied. He cleared his throat and began reading, words wrapping around me like a secret. I find you, a light breaking through the storm, soft and relentless. His voice faltered slightly, but he kept going. When he finished, silence fell, a silence full of meaning. I didn't know you felt like this, I said softly. He smiled, a small, shy curve. Neither did I, not until now. We stayed like that for a long time, the world outside forgotten, two hearts quietly reaching toward each other. The next morning brought the first real moment of confrontation, not with each other, but with ourselves. We found ourselves alone again in the kitchen, sipping coffee in the early light. The tension between us was palpable, a delicate thread stretched tight. I've been thinking, Aiden said suddenly, eyes fixed on his cup, about what comes next. I swallowed, nerves fluttering. What do you mean? After this summer? After all of this? He gestured vaguely between us. I looked away, struggling to find the words. I don't know if I'm ready. Me neither. His voice was soft, almost breaking. But maybe, I said, that's okay. He nodded slowly. Maybe it is. Over the following days, our bond deepened. Not with grand declarations or sudden confessions, but through small acts of trust and care. We shared secrets under the shade of the old oak tree in the backyard, our shoulders touching lightly as we spoke of fears and dreams. We cooked meals together, laughing when things went wrong and savoring the quiet pride of success. We explored the small town, walking through sun-dappled streets, the hum of life around us fading into the background as we lost ourselves in each other's company. One evening, as twilight melted into night, Aiden and I sat side by side on the porch steps. The sky was a tapestry of stars unfolding above us. I think I'm falling for you, he said suddenly, voice trembling. My breath caught. I'm falling too. He reached out, fingers intertwining with mine, warm, steady, real. We didn't need words then. The silence between us said everything. But beneath the sweetness, doubt lingered. Could we hold on to this fragile connection when summer ended? When the world demanded answers we weren't ready to give? As the days grew shorter and the air cooled, those questions hovered like shadows, waiting for the moment to step into the light. I knew no matter what happened next, the summer of storms had changed us forever. The days were slipping away faster than I could catch them. Summer's warmth was fading, replaced by an early chill that whispered of change. Aiden and I had settled into a quiet rhythm, but beneath the surface, tension was growing. Unspoken fears, unanswered questions, and the kind of uncertainty that creeps in when two people start to realize their feelings might not fit the world around them. It started with small things. A glance held too long, a brush of hands that lingered just a little. Every moment with Aiden felt electric, but I was also painfully aware of the weight of reality pressing down. "You're different," Claire said one afternoon, as she and my mom baked in the kitchen. "There's something in your eyes when you look at him." I shrugged, pretending not to hear, but the truth was impossible to ignore. One rainy afternoon, Aiden and I found ourselves holed up in my room. The sky outside was gray and heavy with rain. The storm wasn't as fierce as before, but the steady patter against the window was enough to drown out the noise of the world. He sat on my bed, nervously twisting the hem of his shirt. "I've been thinking," he said, voice hesitant. "About us." "I don't know," I whispered. "I want to believe it can work, but believing isn't always enough." He looked at me, eyes searching mine. "I don't want to hide. Not from you, not from anyone." My throat tightened. "Me neither." He reached for my hand, fingers curling around mine with a warmth that reached through the chill. "We'll figure it out," he promised. I nodded, tears prickling my eyes. The summer was ending, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. With Aiden beside me, I was ready to face whatever storms lay ahead. The weekend arrived with unexpected news. Claire's family was planning to move away by the end of the month. It was a bittersweet revelation, one that wrapped around my chest like a cold weight. That evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, I found Aiden sitting alone in the backyard, fingers tracing patterns in the grass. "Hey," I said softly, settling beside him. "They told me this morning," he said. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure." I reached out, squeezing his hand. "I'm sorry," he exhaled slowly. "It's just, everything's moving so fast, like the ground beneath me is shifting." I nodded, understanding all too well the feeling of losing solid footing. "We still have time," I said, "to make the most of it." He smiled faintly. Time. That word feels both hopeful and cruel. That night, we sat in my room with the window open, the scent of rain lingering in the air. We talked, really talked, for the first time without holding back. "I'm scared," I admitted, "not just about him leaving, but about what this all means." His gaze was steady, unwavering. "I'm scared too, but I don't want fear to define us." We leaned into each other. The silence between us was no longer heavy, but full of possibility. The following days were a whirlwind of shared memories. Long walks, quiet dinners, stolen moments under the stars. One evening, as twilight deepened into night, Aiden pulled me close on the porch swing, his hand cupping my face, thumb brushing gently over my cheek. "I don't know what the future holds," he whispered, "but I know I want you in it." My heart swelled. "I want that too," I said, voice trembling. We kissed, then soft, tentative at first, then deeper, full of everything we'd left unsaid. But reality crept back in with the dawn. Claire's moving date loomed, and with it, the inevitable questions of what came next. One afternoon, as we packed away a box of photographs and keepsakes, Aiden stopped, eyes locked on mine. "Promise me something," he asked. "Anything. No matter what happens, we don't lose this, us, even if we're miles apart." I smiled through tears. "I promise." That night, we lay side by side, the space between us both comforting and painful. "I wish time would slow down," I whispered. "Me too," Aiden replied. "But maybe some things are meant to change, and maybe love means holding on, even when everything else shifts." I closed my eyes, the warmth of his hand a steady anchor. The morning sun spilled gently through the curtains, painting my room with soft gold. The air smelled faintly of autumn, cool, fresh, and tinged with the earthy scent of leaves beginning to turn. It was the day Claire's family would leave our town. The day Aiden would pack up memories and hopes and step into a new chapter far from here. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands clenched loosely in my lap, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside me. The past few months had felt like a blur, a summer storm of feelings I'd never expected, but now could no longer imagine living without. Aiden's footsteps came softly from the other room, a rhythmic echo of the moments we'd shared, the laughter and confessions whispered in the quiet of night. I wished I could freeze this moment, hold it like a precious secret, safe from the ache of goodbye. We had spent the night before wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside disappearing into shadows as we bared our souls beneath the worn quilt on my bed. Our conversation had flowed like a gentle river, carrying fears and hopes in equal measure. I'm scared, I admitted, voice barely more than a whisper. Scared that this is just a summer fling, that when the leaves fall, so will we. Aiden's hand found mine in the dark, fingers curling around with a warmth that reached through the chill. I'm scared too, he said, but I want to believe in what we have. More than that, I want to fight for it. His words were a balm to my heart. Fragile, but fierce. I had never been good at fighting for myself, but for Aiden, I found a quiet courage I didn't know I had. We don't have to know what happens next, I said softly. We just have to be honest with each other. He kissed my forehead, a tender promise in that simple touch. The morning air was crisp as Aiden and I stood side by side on the porch, the world around us waking slowly. A soft breeze carried the scent of wet earth and fallen leaves, reminding me of how much had changed and how much was still to come. Claire's moving van was packed and waiting at the curb. The quiet hum of engines and the shuffle of feet felt like the soundtrack to the end of an era. I hate goodbyes, Aiden said, breaking the silence as he laced his fingers through mine. Me too, I whispered, eyes on the van that would carry him away. But maybe this isn't goodbye, he said. Maybe it's just, see you soon. He squeezed my hand gently. See you soon, he echoed, though the words felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. We spent the last hour together like a snapshot in time. Walking through the park where we first shared secrets, sitting by the river that had been our sanctuary, and talking about everything and nothing. Aiden's laugh, light and genuine, was the sound I wanted to carry with me forever. His eyes, bright and searching, held the weight of unspoken promises. When the time came to part, we stood in the quiet shadow of the driveway. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my chest. I don't want to lose this, I said, voice trembling. You won't, he promised, voice steady, despite the tremor I heard beneath. Distance can't change what we have. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of late-night calls and messages, sharing pieces of our days like fragments of a shared dream. We sent photos of sunsets, songs that reminded us of each other, and letters filled with hopes, fears, and the everyday magic of connection. Some nights, when the silence was too loud, I would close my eyes and imagine Aiden beside me, his hand in mine, his breath warm against my skin. Those moments kept me grounded, a lifeline tethered by love. But it wasn't always easy. The ache of missing him was a constant companion, a quiet reminder that life's best moments often come wrapped in bittersweetness. One evening, I found myself staring out the window, the sky a tapestry of stars scattered like diamonds. Why does love have to be so complicated? I whispered into the dark. A soft vibration pulled me back, a message from Aiden. Because it's real, and real things are worth fighting for. I smiled, tears blurring my vision. In that message, I found hope. Hope that the distance was temporary, and that our story was still unfolding. Months passed, seasons shifting in a rhythm that felt both endless and fleeting. Autumn deepened, leaves turned vibrant shades of amber and crimson, and the world seemed to hold its breath between endings and beginnings. Then, one day, as I walked through the quiet streets where we had first met, my phone buzzed with a message that stopped me in my tracks. I'm coming back. Let's write the next chapter together. My heart skipped. The words were simple, yet they carried a lifetime of meaning. I stood beneath the fading light, letting the warmth of that message fill the empty spaces inside me. It was a promise, not just of reunion, but of new beginnings, of unwritten tomorrows full of possibility. I realized then that love was never about perfect timing or clear answers. It was about courage. The courage to hold on, to trust, and to keep walking forward hand in hand. Aiden and I had started as strangers, thrown together by chance and circumstance, but we had become so much more. Two hearts learning to beat in sync, finding strength in vulnerability. As night fell, I pictured him arriving. His smile lighting up the room, the familiar warmth of his touch. No matter what came next, I knew we would face it together. Because sometimes, love is about finding home, not in a place but in a person. And with Aiden I was finally home.